Doug Gottlieb, the Duggar. FS1, personality, Fox Sports Radio. Here's what's funny about basketball. And this is actually funny about all sports. If, let's say, Doug, you had a show that you really didn't like. You just went out and you drove home to your lovely family. You're like, I didn't have a very good show. I could, with virtual guarantee that your next day you'd have your best show ever. You wouldn't sleep right. You'd think about it all day. But in sports, we tend to think, what I saw last night is going to be the next night. So Golden State's going to hear for 2 days. Soft, embarrassing. My gut feeling is Houston found something, but I'm not sure they can duplicate that.
No, it's going to be very difficult. Remember, they only played 7 guys the entire game. And Golden State was playing without Andre Iguodala.
Who's valuable?
Incredibly valuable. If not, listen, Andre Iguodala is not a particularly good shooter. And so when I say that they were playing 3-on-5 offensively, because you have 2 non-shooters. Draymond Green won't look at the basket as far as shooting jump shots anymore. He didn't even make a dunk last night. He has lost all of his offensive confidence as a scorer, not as a facilitator. So they're playing 3-on-5, and when Steph comes off the floor, they're playing 2-on-5. The court really shrinks, and Kevin Durant has to be having flashbacks of, hey, it's like playing with Andre Robertson. Everywhere I go, there's a second guy there. It's increasingly difficult.
Yes.
The difference is when Iguodala's on the floor, he knows exactly where he's supposed to be. He understands perfect spacing. He plays in an area below the backboard at times called the ghost position, to where if you leave him, you just throw it up to the rim, he can get an alley-oop. Last night they had Jordan Bell, they had Kayvon Looney. Those young kids were just lost as to where am I supposed to be.
Yeah.
And even Sean Livingston on the floor, who's a non-shooter, kind of in the way so that Steph couldn't be Steph, KD couldn't be KD. And, of course, I don't know what happened to Klay Thompson. He's on Ariza Island, I guess, because that was the worst execution, the worst spacing, the worst shot selection I have seen from the Warriors. They got a couple of defensive stops at the right times and somehow still had a shot to win the game.
That's what's remarkable to me. Doug, if I give you the numbers, outside of that 12-0 start and that 4 minutes of Steph being amazing, I felt like Houston was just a little, even on inbounds plays.
Even the 12-0 start, which everybody's like, wow, 12-0 start, they should have been up 20-0, 25-2, because Houston was just not making shots out of the gate. But Golden State, in their Golden State sort of way, they throw the ball away. They miss a layup here. They miss a shot there. You're right. Now, you're right in that Houston probably outplayed them if you took away the start and you took away Steph just going nuts. in the middle of the third quarter.
Absurd.
He was 1 of 11 after his big shimmy, and they called timeout.
Yeah.
He couldn't make a shot. On the other hand, that's also what Golden State does. Like, they're just okay, and then all of a sudden they hit you at 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, and you look up, you're like, wait. We were even with them, and now they were down 12 points, 82-70, I think. So you're right, only that is more par for the course for Golden State.
Well, it is interesting. If I think, and this is the way basketball works, I've seen 4 Celtic Cav games. I'm not sure what the true game is.
Yeah, it's hard.
Okay, I've seen 4 games with Houston Golden State. Here's what I feel the true game is. If you go back to game 1, Golden State was better, a little more skilled, and just made those tough shots because you can't defend KD. Of the 4 Houston Golden State games, game 1 feels like what it is. Both wanted to win. There was urgency, and Golden State was just 7% better.
That's totally fair. On the other hand, series sometimes hinge on, can a team steal a game? And I felt like Houston stole one last night.
Yeah.
Yes, we both agree for a good portion of the game they were the better team, but still that was thievery, right? That was Steph misses a dead layup, and then Draymond misses 1 or 2 free throws. Heck, Steph was wide open on that last play with 0.5 seconds to go.
He was.
Look, there's a bunch of things to get to. I still don't. Somebody's going to have to stop and explain to me why Chris Paul made the second free throw, the math to it. There's 0.5 seconds to go in the game. 0.5. Okay? All he has to do, he misses the first free throw. If he makes both, it's 4 points. It doesn't matter. But he misses the first free throw. So it's a 2-point game. And obviously, if you make it, it's a 3-point game. And the math would tell you, okay, that takes losing out of the equation. But you can't go length of the floor. And even if you get the rebound and call a timeout, you're going to lose time. It made no sense. As good as Houston played defensively. And look, they really mugged it up. They just grabbed and held.
They did.
And the officials swallowed the whistles for the most part.
Which they do in the conference finals and finals.
And that's the way to beat Golden State. That's the way that Oklahoma City beat Golden State in the regular season. Everyone knows if you can be super physical with Steph, sometimes he'll settle. Same thing with Kevin Durant. He took a turnaround jump shot from the post, which hit the side of the backboard. It was embarrassing. But they mugged it up. And the officials swallowed the whistles, and Golden State collapsed. But it doesn't make any sense for Chris Paul to make that second free throw.
Okay, first of all, should Steve Kerr have called the timeout?
I mean, I don't know if he should run something or call a timeout, but that wasn't good enough.
That's right.
Right? So I don't care if you call a timeout, but you mean to tell me you didn't have a plan in place for if Houston misses a shot? Remember, Golden State got to stop. They did what they're supposed to do. They got to stop. It's 2 points. There has to be something they just kind of went into flow, which just go play. Draymond Green set a high ball screen. I do think that KD thought he saw something and probably actually he passing the ball to Klay Thompson in the corner is not a bad decision.
Right.
It's just he gave it to him actually a tinge too quick because Klay didn't have his feet set. And then there's Klay's there, KD's there. And Steph's right there. There's no spacing.
But let me defend Kerr on this. This is not a young team like Boston or Utah with Donovan Mitchell. This is a veteran team. Could I make the argument for Kerr is, I got KD in this league 10 years. These are high-functioning, high-IQ players. I'm on the sidelines. I'm like, fellas, this is why we get along. I let you play.
Fair, with the exception of this. This is what their offense had looked like the entire fourth quarter.
Okay.
Right? So in the grand scheme of things, yeah, you got Kevin Durant, you got Steph Curry. Neither are really point guards, but they can both initiate. You just kind of spread them out and let them play. The problem is they hadn't seemed to figure out anything with this Houston defense in the fourth quarter. Now, let's go in fairness. When they lost to Indiana in a couple rounds ago in the playoffs, LeBron was bad in the fourth quarter, a -9, only 4 points. I don't believe you went on a rant or a tangent about how bad LeBron was. When they lost to Boston in game one, he didn't score a point in the fourth quarter, didn't make a shot in the fourth quarter. He was a -14. In game one to Toronto, when they did win, he was 3 of 11 in the fourth quarter. So there have been moments to which you haven't called him out. There have been. He's been bad. We've said, hey, his teammates need to pick him up because he carries them the first 3 quarters. I'll say this. Kevin Durant was awful in the fourth quarter.
He was.
Embarrassingly bad.
For the second best player in the world.
Yeah, I think I personally think right now, skill set wise, he's the best player in the world.
Okay.
Last night he was not. Shot an air ball from 3, which was contested. Shot a turnaround jump shot, hit the backboard, and made a bad decision on that last play. On the other hand, the great thing is there are more games to be played. Yeah. I think he was thinking too much about those 2 previous possessions and that they were bad shots and he was forcing them. He made up his mind before he ever even looked at it. He never looked at the basket. We're talking about P.J. Tucker. If you watch him come off that screen, he didn't even look at the basket. He had made it up in his mind that he was going to give it up and maybe get it back if somebody else helped off him. It was an awful decision. And we'll see if he reacts better or worse, and this becomes a pattern of behavior the rest of the series.
Okay, it used to be this was the world of basketball. You went to high school, and the high school coach would bark at you. He was tough. He'd been there for 35 years, and that high school basketball coach was the beginning and the end of that highway. You didn't talk back. Then you went to college, and you stayed for your college coach for 3 or 4 years, and he ran the show. And then you went to the NBA. And you were only making, $800,000 a year. A lot of times, coaches not making that much. They told you what you do. Okay, it was a different culture. The culture now is you don't have a high school basketball coach you listen to. You have an AAU coach. He's kissing your butt. Then you go to college, and John Calipari, Mike Krzyzewski, just praying you stay for a second year. They kiss your butt. Then you go into the NBA, and now the players make so much. It's a players' league. If the player doesn't like the head coach of the NBA, coach is gone. Players now are softer because of the culture of basketball over the last 20 years. This is what's interesting. James Harden, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Hall of Fame players, all awful last night. We regularly see the greatest players in the world lose utter confidence on a shot, lose utter confidence in their games. Kobe didn't. Kobe never stopped shooting, could go for 40. He'd keep shooting. MJ didn't. Isaiah Thomas didn't. A lot of our players now, Doug, the great ones, they're soft. You can get into their head. Kevin Durant literally has to recalibrate. He fell apart. Is my theory crazy?
No, it's not. I mean, I think it's also, you have to add in a couple other factors. Okay, the way the game's officiated for most of the season allows them to be much more finesseful.
Yeah.
Of course, last night looked like the 90s basketball that we grew up with, right?
Yeah.
Grab, hold, city, freedom of movement. Let's just the toughest man wins.
Yeah.
And so they have a tough time adjusting to that mentally.
Okay.
I also think that players, honestly, are more worldly and more intelligent. These guys are really, really bright. Kevin Durant and LeBron James are super, super bright outside of the world of basketball. And it's one of the costs of intelligence is you think about things too much.
Yeah, you
can't
overthink.
think. You think Joe Crispin beat me out to make the Lakers one year. And he used to have an expression, played at Penn State, played for the Lakers and the Suns, and played forever overseas, a college coach now in Jersey. And he said, you think you stink. And it's true. If you think, you stink. And I think that's what you're getting at, is these guys have, for their entire lives, everyone bows down and we make it easy for them. Whereas, I don't think we all want a 90s coach or 80s coach with, remember those bike coaching shorts?
Yeah, and they're yelling and screaming.
And then, like a butterfly collar like my dad used, and a whistle.
But
it toughens you up. Freshmen used to sit, right? They used to be, rookies used to never play in the playoffs.
Right.
You used to have to earn things. And now, hey, if things are tough, let's go get a dream team together and let's just go beat people.
And I do think it affects even star players where they lose confidence because they face a crisis they haven't coming up through AAU, high school basketball in the 70s, and college coaching. Now, shift to this. Here's what made me happy last night. I love Chris Paul. It's not flashy, not vertical, not dynamic, not a 3-star. And I understand in basketball, Westbrook's way more fun to watch. I get it. And I get John Wall is way faster and way more fun to watch. But, man, Chris Paul was great last night. Chris Paul was great last night. Made me very happy because everybody's always banging on Chris Paul. I loved it. Did you?
I did, too. I think there's interesting false narratives. And this is where I get to the Kevin Durant choked last night, but that doesn't necessarily make him a choker.
Right.
Chris Paul had a historic implosion against the Oklahoma City Thunder one year when he was with the Clippers.
Yeah.
But he also had an incredible Game 7 against the Spurs 4 seasons ago.
Yes.
In which he hit the game winner and eliminated the Spurs from the playoffs. He also, last year, Game 6 on the road, they dominate. They beat the Utah Jazz in Salt Lake to force a Game 7. Now, they lost in Game 7, but the idea that he's a choker, that he could never get out of the second round in New Orleans, in Oklahoma City when the Hornets moved, or with the Clippers, is a false narrative. And last night it showed that when you give him the opportunity and you give him the space, even with the Warriors who they're longer than him, they sit on his right hand because he always wants to go right, he still found a way. He made some impossible shots, an impossible bowling pass where he throws it all the way across the court to Trevor Ariza. And I think he showed that it is a false narrative that he's been a choker. More times than not, I would prefer Chris Paul to be on my team and have the ball in his hands at the end of a game than the other way around.
Yeah, and by the way, I get why people fall in love with John Wall and Westbrook. I get it. I mean, they're vertical, they're fast, they finish, they're bang, bang, bang fireworks show.
Or even Steph Curry.
Yes, it's more fun. Steph Curry's more fun to watch than Chris Paul's at running back, and you look up, he's got 132 yards, never had a carry over 12. And you're just like, man, that guy ran for 100. And all of a sudden, Ezekiel Elliott busts a 40-yarder, and it's like, oh, yeah. Todd Gurley gives you 5 yards a carry. He's not that flashy, but there's something to be said about a guy that you look up at the end of the game. With Chris Paul on the floor and without Chris Paul on the floor, the numbers last night with James Harden, they basically, Houston said, we're taking the ball out of Harden's hands, we're putting it in Chris Paul's hands in the second half, and it was a different game. Now, I want to shift to this.
Okay.
We know, and I think LeBron knows, man, we don't match up with the Warriors. But I'm sitting there thinking last night, dang, 3 games left, 2 are in Houston. Cleveland kind of matches up a little. Listen, Clint Capella or Kevin Durant. I'm watching that game last night. I'm like, think about 5 reasons LeBron could beat the Rockets. Here, I'll throw them to you, Doug.
Okay.
Houston hadn't been in the finals. We don't trust D'Antoni late. Better matchup without Durant. Houston hasn't faced LeBron much. And the Cavs would have the best player in the series, hands down. Don't they match up with Houston better, Doug?
Yes, parts of them match up better with Houston because much like we've seen in this series, you're going to have to take Capella off the floor with Kevin Love playing the 5, which opens up the lane, as opposed to when the Warriors play small, they still have Kevin Durant who can still defend the rim even though they're playing small ball. And the Warriors have 3 prolific scorers. The difference is, I think the Warriors, the Rockets have too much overall offense for them, and I do think that Ariza it has a quality matchup. They don't have the depth of P.J. Tucker and Ariza, and outside of that, good luck guarding LeBron. But I still think there's too many weapons there, and Chris Paul will dominate the backcourt of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
But George Hill is long and physical. He's a
terrible defender. He's getting lit up by look. They're playing in a JV league. They're playing the Eastern Conference, which isn't as good. They're playing against the Celtics, who don't have their two best players. They're playing against a couple of rookies, 20-year-old kids, and Terry Rozier has been exposed as being a really good backup, right? Marcus Smart can't make a shot and doesn't know he can't make a shot. Like I love the Celtics, and maybe they win this series, right? But the idea that beating the Celtics twice at home is somewhere in line with beating the Rockets or beating the Warriors, like this is a massive step up in weight class. We all know it, and it's made even more obvious when you sit down, take a breath, and go, Eastern Conference not as good. They avoided a couple of matchups which could have been problematic, like the Sixers or like the Wizards, and they're playing against the Celtics, who don't have their two best players. Outside of that, it's exactly like playing in the Western Conference.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.